play.
And we're back talking more about the Apocalypse Rulebook. In this video, we're going to talk about the new apocalyptic weapons, including the new destroyer rules, because a lot of people are concerned about the changes they made here. So we're going to go over that right now. Now, if you've played 40K before, you're familiar with these templates. We've got the small blast, large blast, and of course, the flamer template. And these are the ones that you're used to using. If you've played the Apocalypse rules before, then you're familiar with these templates. We got the Hellstorm template, of course got the large 10-inch blast, and then the Apocalyptic Barrage. So this has different numbers on it. You place this over the units, you roll the number of dice that it tells you to with the weapon, and whatever number it is, that's where the Apocalyptic Barrage happens. So this is actually a bunch of just large blasts, but it happens multiple times. So it's boom, 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 or whatever you happen to roll. So you have a choice of where you place it, but you don't have a choice of which ones hit. So those are the new apocalyptic ones from 5th edition. Now they have even newer ones, which unfortunately at the time of me making this video, I don't have in yet. They're still on their way. I'll probably get them in the next day or two. So I'll just show you some pictures from the Games Workshop website. Of course, they still use the Hellstorm template and the 10-inch one, but they've introduced a new 15-inch blast marker, this one that you can see right here. And the difference with this one is it's actually designed to have different strengths at the different points in the marker. There's the 5-inch, 10-inch, and 15-inch. So don't worry, this isn't a new weapon where it's just place down the 15-inch blast and everything underneath it gets the same strength. So it's meant to be something that's huge. You put it down and it explodes outward. One of the prime uses for the new 15-inch blast is when a super heavy explodes. You place that over top of it, you roll on the chart, and it tells you which strengths to have and which AP values to have at each point in the template. And then they also changed this one. So this one is now obsolete. You can still technically use it, but the new one, as you can see in this picture, allows you to choose how the template looks. In other words, you can change its shape before you place it down, and then it scatters, and then you roll on the Apocalyptic Barrage table, just like this one, where you roll a number of dice and it shows you which one is actually hit. So like I said before, it appears that these templates are limited edition, because when I went to pre-order mine, or when I went to purchase the ones that we're getting, it said while quantities last. And I think if that's the case, I hope it's just while quantities last at first, because they're expecting to sell it really fast, and then they're going to re-release them in a couple months like they have some other stuff. I hope that is the case, because if it isn't, that is really unwise, because the templates are something that you really need. Now in the book, they have a page where they tell you all the different sizes. See right here? And they say, hey, you can make your own, and here's the different sizes that you need, and here's how they are shaped, and everything like that. But come on, we don't want to have to cut our own things out. We want these. We want the nice acrylic templates that'll work. And you know, if they don't make them, somebody else will. And that never works well in this industry with Games Workshop. And so that is the new apocalyptic weapons. And the way they work is similar to the way they worked before, except for the Apocalyptic Barrage, where you get to choose its shape, and the new 15-inch, which has its own rules. Now, the real big change that everybody wants to hear about is the new destroyer weapons. Now, for those of you that don't know yet, they've really buffed the destroyer weapon to a sense. It's really gotten stronger. Before, in 5th edition Apocalypse, a destroyer weapon, that's basically like a strength 11 weapon. Except what it did is when it hit something, it automatically killed it. If it hit a vehicle, then it did an automatic penetrating hit. There's a big difference between automatically killing a guy and doing a penetrating hit. So if you had monstrous creatures that got hit by a destroyer weapon, boom, they're gone. But if you had your little 35-point rhino, it took one penetrating hit, which may or may not destroy it. Now, a lot of them were like ordnance weapons and AP 1 or 2, so they got to add to the vehicle damage chart and most likely would destroy it. But still, it didn't quite work the way that it was worded, especially when you got the large 10-inch destroyer blast. And so they've updated destroyer weapons. So first off, there are no saving throws allowed against a destroyer weapon, whereas before, invulnerable saves were allowed, but cover saves were never allowed. And now what happens is if you hit a vehicle or building, you roll on the chart. You roll a d6, and on a 1, they suffer a penetrating hit. So on a 1, they suffer a penetrating hit. On a 2 to 5, they lose, a super heavy loses D3 plus 1 hull points. And every other type of vehicle explodes. So you get hit by a destroyer weapon, and on a 2+, if you're a regular vehicle, you're dead. If you are a super heavy, you lose D3 plus 1 hull points. Now that sounds like a lot, but it's not actually, because the super heavies before had structure points, and now they're hull points. And so if they had like 3 structure points, you multiply the number of structure points by 3 to get how many hull points it had, or it now has. So if it had like 3 or 4 structure points, now it has 9 or 12 hull points, and some of them have even more than that. So a super heavy losing D3 plus 1 hull points is about equivalent to it losing just 1 structure point from before. So that's not too bad. So super heavies can take destroyer hits, unless you roll a 6 on that table. If you roll a 6, then regular vehicles are still exploded, but a super heavy takes D6 plus 6 hull points instead. So that's equivalent to losing upwards of 4 structure points. Now that's only on a 6. So you know what? I think that destroyer weapons actually work just fine for super heavy vehicles, because let's take it, they will usually have at least 12 hull points. And some of the bigger ones like Titans will have even more than that. And then you got your super big Emperor Titans. They'll be able to take a lot of destroyer hits. Non-vehicle models is rather interesting. On a 1, nothing happens. So unlike a vehicle, nothing happens if you roll a 1. On a 2 to a 5, they lose D3 plus 1 wounds. Now if they're a gargantuan creature, they can weather that to a point, because before, gargantuan creatures, when they got hit by a destroyer weapon, would lose D3 wounds. So it's buffed a little bit. It's D3 plus 1 wounds now. But here's a real clincher. If you roll a 6, you lose D6 plus 6 wounds. So the thing here is, it doesn't matter if you're immune to instant death or anything like that. It's D3 plus 1 wounds or D6 plus 6. Now that's only if you roll a 6. So let's kind of ignore the 6 slot there, because that's not going to be happening very often. What's going to happen most often is a 2 to 5. So if you have your monstrous creature there, he's going to lose D3 plus 1 wounds. I personally think that that is fine, that it seems to have scaled down the destroyer weapons against non-vehicles and really scaled it up against vehicles. I don't agree with how lethal it is against regular vehicles, but I do agree with how lethal it is against super heavies. So this should have done something different. Like if you rolled a 1 for vehicles, maybe it would be a glancing hit rather than penetrating, and maybe a 2 to 5 would have been a penetrating hit. Or just have them lose the same number of hull points as a super heavy, D3 plus 1 hull points. If you think about it, some regular vehicles could actually take that. A lot of the Necron vehicles have 4 hull points, so unless you've rolled a 5 or a 6 when you're rolling that D3, they're going to survive a destroyer hit. So it just seemed to make sense that they would get that, rather than just being like they suffer an explodes result. So basically, you're dead, no matter what. It doesn't matter what vehicle you have, what kind of saves it has. You roll in an explodes result is just that, the vehicle is gone. So I don't agree with buffing the destroyer that much against vehicles. But at the same time, I do agree with what they did with gargantuans and super heavies and regular infantry and monstrous creature models as well, basically your non-vehicle models. So sorry for all you armored Apocalypse players, the ones who like to bring, you know, the 50 Lehman Russes and all your other weapons as well, all your other tanks. Those ones are going to be in trouble. But for those of you who like to bring mass monstrous creatures and gargantuan creatures and super heavies, you'll be fine. You'll be able to survive the destroyer stuff a lot more. And of course, there's lots of destroyer stuff out there. You might be thinking, but Matthew, there's so many of them out there, I'm just going to die. It's like, well, that's Apocalypse. If you're not dying quickly, if you weather a turn and take very little casualties, that is a boring Apocalypse game. It's supposed to be blow for blow. I know some of the 40K games you've played in the past might have been one-sided, where one side is able to just destroy the other with minimal casualties, but that should never happen in a game of Apocalypse, because it defeats the purpose of Apocalypse. When would a game or a campaign go to an apocalyptic level where it's ginormous armies on either side, unless they were actually a match for each other? If it was just a one-sided battle, it would never get to the Apocalypse size. They would just come in, wipe out the enemy, and they'd be done with it. So just keep that in mind, that you need to enjoy watching your guys die, even if we don't completely agree with how these rules work. Now, things like the Vortex weapons, those have changed. Or sorry, those haven't changed. It's still, you place the Vortex grenade thing and it moves around until you roll doubles like it did before. So that hasn't changed at all. So that is my review on the new apocalyptic weapons and the new templates and the new destroyer rules. In our next video, we are going to talk about the Armageddon campaign and go over what they've done there and what it allows you to do for your Apocalypse campaigns. So stay tuned and happy wargaming.